everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this very special D6 presentation. For those of you that joined us during the live stream, apologies that the internet could not keep up with this fantastic amount of information we were throwing at it. I am joined here today by Rob MacNeice from MPS. We're going to record the presentation for you, put it up on our YouTube channel, and if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments to us below. Thank you for everybody that actually joined us while we were trying to do it live. But we want to make sure that you actually get the information. So here goes, we're doing it as a recording. So Rob, the D6 about to hit the shelves.
Yeah, absolutely. D6 has been on the market now for a couple of weeks. But I'm going to talk to you about the D6 and why I believe it is the absolute pinnacle in terms of pro image making equipment. Before I do so, I'll just do a little brief introduction for anyone that didn't see earlier. But my name's Rob MacNeice. I've been working for Nikon for 15 years, last 14 of which for Nikon Professional Services. I now head up the MPS team. So we look after pro photographers, some of the best photographers in the world at national and international events, and when they've got any problems and so on, and getting a lot of feedback from the photographers as well. And we've had a lot of feedback on the D6 already from photographers that have been using it. So I'm going to talk to you about why this is the ultimate camera, whether you're in the market for the D6 or another Nikon camera. Hopefully you can pick up a few bits from the talk today.
Fantastic. All right. Well, in which case, I'm going to give you the floor by switching over so that we see you and the slides that you want to share. Feel free to switch back to yourself if there's anything that you want to specifically talk about. But the stage is yours.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Becky. Well, thank you to Becky and Grace of Westminster for having me on your live chats today. The first thing I want to talk to you about is actually about the Nikon brand. Now, I know I'm probably preaching to the converted because you're all, I'm sure, big Nikon fans. But I'm a Nikon fan as well as someone that works for them. I'm a person that's felt passionate about the brand for a long time. I'm just going to go back to my slide here and just check that everything's going okay. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's talk. Brilliant. Thank you, Becky. So just talking about some of the qualities that make Nikon so great, really. Firstly, is the production quality of a Nikon camera. When you take a Nikon camera home, whether it's a Coolpix or any piece of Nikon equipment, binoculars, Coolpix camera, Nikon Z, entry-level DSLR, right through to something like this, you know that it's going to work out of the box. It's very, very rare that you take a Nikon camera home and you have a fault with it. Nikon really do put a lot of pride into the quality control of our cameras. One of the most important things about a camera is the quality of the results that it delivers. Now, Nikon have been making some of the best image sensors on the market since DSLRs came out, but certainly in the last few years. The D850, for instance, was rated by a company called DxOMark, who independently review image sensors, as the best image sensor ever produced on a DSLR. And we're carrying that sort of technology across to all of our other cameras as well. Durability as well. If you want a camera that's rugged and that works well in all sorts of conditions, stands up to the elements, stands up to dust, sand and things like that, you're going to go for a Nikon. Nikon, as I said before, is the choice of the British Army, and that is not only because of the quality and the reliability, but also because of the durability of our cameras. We really do make them with ruggedness in mind. Some of you may know of Don McCullin, war photographer, documented a lot of the conflicts back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Now, his Nikon F took a bullet in Korea in, I think, 1968 and saved his life. Now, that kind of ruggedness, that bulletproofness, if you like,
quite literally bulletproof.
Literally bulletproof. This is carried across to our modern cameras as well, such as the D6, D5, D850, and so on. Also, we really think about the operability of our cameras. We think about the user and how easy it is for them to use. One thing that's great about our cameras is the menu design. Now, if you can pick up any one of our digital cameras and understand the menu, it's very easy to use, then you can pick up any of them, because the menu system on all of our cameras, right through from the Coolpix, through to the D3000 series, through to cameras like this, the menu system is exactly the same on all of them. So you can find the things that you want to change really easily. But we also really think about the ergonomics as well, how the camera feels in your hands. And I really think Nikon thinks about that more than any other camera manufacturer out there.
Mm-hmm.
Also compatibility of our cameras. As you know, Nikon have been in business for over 100 years, but we've been making SLR cameras since 1959. So that's over 60 years of f-mount lenses, and we're still making f-mount lenses to this day. So if you've got any Nikon DSLR, you can put a whole number of Nikon f-mount lenses on, whether it's a new camera with an old lens or vice versa, and you can still use those. So you don't have to buy new lenses. Even if you're using a Nikon Z system, for instance, Z6, Z7, Z50, with the FTZ adapter, you can use a whole number of old Nikon lenses. I actually use a Z7 mostly myself. I use it sometimes in conjunction with a 500mm f8 mirror lens from 1973.
Oh, wow.
Which is the same year I was born.
A lot of our regulars will know how passionate I am about manual focus lenses and using those on my Z6 and the D850.
Absolutely.
We're all
that's right. Absolutely. So seeing from your live stream last week, Becky, absolutely. And with the FTZ adapter, even you can use your old lenses, and they're still going to work perfectly well, which is fantastic. Also, we think about the precision and the development in manufacture of our equipment as well. So for photographers that are using this kind of camera, so many might be pro sports photographers, some might be news photographers or wildlife photographers, where you need to have a huge zoom or magnification on your subject. You might be using something like the 400mm f2.8 lens. Now, that lens in particular has got some elements of it that are hand ground in Japan, and it takes 3 to 4 days to grind a specific element of that lens by hand to ensure that it's absolutely precise in terms of the optical performance. So yeah, all of these things go up to make a really solid brand, a really good brand that you can depend on. So yeah, going back to the D6, which we're talking about, as I said, I've had a lot of feedback from photographers at different cameras, and like anything with technology, they get better and better. But I really thought that the D5 was the ultimate, that you couldn't get any better than the D5, but we really have with the D6. And I think one of the most notable upgrades over the D5 on the D6 is the autofocus system. It's got a whole new autofocus system, which really does set a whole new benchmark for DSLR AF performance. Now, looking at this slide here, it might appear quite small on your screen, but in the top left hand of my window, you can see the new focus sensor that's been put into the D6. So it's got a whole new focus sensor, which is called the Multicam 37K AF module. That's a unit that sits up.
Really rolls off the tongue, that name.
It's not easy to say, at all, Becky. But it is a fantastic new piece of hardware, because it's actually got 37,000 individual focus sensors, which makes the D6 AF performance superb. Now, looking at the right-hand side of the screen, on the top, you've got the array of focus points in the D6. It's got 105 focus points. Now, if you compare that to the D5 below it, the D5 had 153. Now, a lot of photographers will automatically think, well, 153, that's got to be better. But actually, no. The D6 focus array has actually got 1.6 times more density. Oops, I've skipped a bit too far. Let me just go back a slide. 1.6 times density, thank you, of selectable points. And all of the points are selectable, whereas only 99 of them were on the D5. But also all of them are crosshairs, which is very, very significant, because crosshair sensors, which pick up on a horizontal and a vertical point of contrast, are a lot more sensitive than non-crosshair types. So in general, the D6 will provide much more accurate focus acquisition, but also much more accurate and quicker focus tracking as well. A new thing we've got with the D6 is a new application-specific integrated circuit. Another thing that's not easy to say, but it's dedicated for the D6. So what that means is there is one chip inside the camera that is only doing autofocus calculations. Now, no other brand of DSLR has got that. All other camera manufacturers have chips that work for autofocus and other things. So when the camera's thinking about focusing, other tasks are slowing down in the camera. So that means with the D6, it really can provide lightning fast focus without the detriment of any of the other camera's functions, like noise reduction and things like that it's doing in the same time. Oh, I've jumped a bit quickly here, but We can see here, this is a sequence of images of a gull coming into land, taken by a very talented and very technical photographer who I've been dealing with over the last couple of weeks, called Tony O'Brien. Now, Tony was one of the first people that we gave a D6 to trial, because he's incredibly technical with autofocus systems. Now, I knew that Tony would pick up on all the autofocus improvements. And here with this sequence, this is the camera shooting at 14 frames a second, which the D6 does. I'll talk to you more about the speed in a while. But this is a sequence slowed down by about 5 times. And this is in a backlit situation, which traditionally is quite difficult for AF sensors to deal with. But the camera has really nailed focus on every single one, just using auto area AF. So if we concentrate on one of those frames, which is just after the gull's landed in the water, if I zoom in a little bit more, you can see that the detail has really held. Wow. And this is the camera's auto area AF. Yeah, absolutely. You know, the photographer, obviously not saying there's no skill involved. No, he's a very skilled photographer, being able to track that quickly as well. But really, he's relied on the camera's autofocus system to ensure that every single shot within that sequence was pin sharp. So just moving on to the next slide. I've just got to fix screen here. Give me 1 second.
That's all right. There's a little bit of a lag from when I talk to when you hear me, I think, which is down to Skype.
So another new feature that we've put in is a new options for group area AF. Now, those of you that are using D4 or D5 might be familiar with group area autofocus. It's an array of 5 focus points in a kind of a plus formation, if you like, that you can select for sports or wildlife to ensure that the camera is delivering the best and the fastest focus acquisition and tracking, but just within a certain region of the frame within that array. But we've identified that there was a need to be able to customize that group area AF. So within the D6, we've actually put in 17 different selectable sets of customizable group area focus points. I'll just show you. Now I can just jump to a screenshot here. So looking in the camera's menu, if we go into the custom setting menu, we go down to autofocus, and then we go down to option A10, which is the custom groupings. This is where you can select the different arrays for how the camera's focusing is going to work. And it's going to just concentrate on that formation. So depending on what your subject is, you can change that group area AF, and you've got 17 different options which you can store. You can store one as C1 in the camera's menu and one as C2. So you can quickly go to those to change the focus type depending on the subject. Now, we've been very fortunate to have a very, very talented sports photographer called Clive Mason, who I would say is one of the best sports photographers in the world. He works for Getty Images, and he actually came over from another brand a couple of years ago to Nikon. We were really pleased about that. And he was chosen by Nikon Corporation to be one of the 2 brochure photographers for the D6. So here you can see a sample that Clive has taken where he's used the 15:3 option in the autofocus to ensure that the camera has retained focus on the table tennis player's eyes, and it hasn't accidentally jumped to the ball or to the bat or to the net or something like that. And there are lots of different times where you might want to select a different group area AF depending on the nature of your subject. Another new thing we put into the D6, which is a new feature, is the option to have a wide autofocus area. So if you're using single point AF, now as I said at the beginning, the camera's got 105 all selectable focus points. Depending on your subject, how fast it's moving, whether you feel that you can track it within the frame, you might just want to use a single point AF. But traditionally, it was quite a narrow point, which means that if you're not perfectly accurate on your subject's face or eye or whatever it might be, if that subject moves a bit too quick for you, the camera might accidentally pick up on the background. Now, that could be very pertinent for wildlife photographers, again, sports photographers, that kind of thing. So we've now put in a wide option, which is custom setting A7 in the camera's custom setting menu, where you can go slightly wider. So you can see this example of the 2 sailors on the right-hand side. Clive Mason has taken this image again, and he's concentrated on the sailor in the foreground. And he selected the wide point there to ensure that her face is perfectly sharp. And he's taking this picture from a moving boat onto another moving boat. So I'm sure that was an incredibly tricky task. Another new feature we put into the D6 is a preset AF starting point for auto area AF. Now, Many of you will be familiar with auto area AF. We have it in all of our cameras. We have it in all the Z range, going up from the D3000, D5000 series, D7000, D750, D780, 800 series, and so on. Auto area AF. Now, in auto area AF, it's really good. A lot of photographers really rely on it, but it means the photographer is not in control at all. The camera actually looks at the subject and tries to determine what the subject is, and the camera will automatically focus on what it thinks is accurate. And it's actually got facial recognition. And for the first time now with the D6, it's actually got eye recognition, which is a first for DSLR photography. Obviously, mirrorless cameras have got it because mirrorless cameras are slightly different in that the focus is picked up from the image sensor, which on something like a Z6, for instance, it's got 24 million pixels to help recognize that there's a face in the frame. But on cameras, on DSLR cameras, they employ different focusing technology. They employ a focus module that we talked about. But for the first time now on DSLR, the D6 has got eye recognition. But also it's got a preset AF starting point, which means that you can now determine the point at which the camera starts to focus. Now, if you've got a subject that's suddenly entering the frame, it could be wildlife. It could be a car coming over the brow of a hill. It could be, it could be a runner coming towards you suddenly entering the frame. You can determine the first point at which the camera starts focusing, and then it will very accurately and faithfully stay locked onto that subject.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Again,
it's definitely
the
developments from seeing from DSLRs to Z cameras, and now this kind of, it's almost like a hybrid system that we're starting to see where the best bits from Z cameras are being put into DSLRs.
Yeah, absolutely. Have I just popped back to me, by the way, Becky?
Yeah.
I'm just relying on this LG. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
So no, absolutely right. I mean, it is. We're getting a lot of the technology that's come from the mirrorless systems, the Z6 and Z7 that have been done so well for us, and now the Z50 as well. That enables better facial recognition, better eye detection, and so on, even when you're not using a mirrorless camera. And there are other features of the D6 as well that have a real crossover with mirrorless technology, like improvement in live view, improvement in video and subject tracking, and so on. And I'll go through some of those. So just going back to the presentation here, if I go on to the next slide.
Yeah.
So another thing, not for everyone, I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but we've improved the auto AF fine tune. So for those of you that are particularly discerning about exactly how accurate your focus is, of course, out of the box, it's going to be great. But to get the best results, you ideally need to calibrate your camera to your lenses. I wouldn't go out and worry. If your images are already sharp enough for you, that's fine. But if you feel that you've got slight back or front focus, with our most recent generation of Pro DSLRs, you can actually fine tune the focus to make sure that your camera and your lens have got the perfect marriage of accuracy. Now, traditionally,
I was going to say, I have a question on that because I did a live stream on AF fine tuning probably a couple of months ago now. Time it has no meaning anymore. But so up until the D6, we could only save a fine-tune value for one focal length. Is that right? Or zoom lens?
That is absolutely right, Becky. I'll be honest with you. You're probably more of an expert on this than me. but and I haven't actually tried it on the D6 yet. But from what I understand, you're absolutely right. Traditionally, you could only set one fine-tune value for a lens. So let's say on a 70 to 200, for instance, you might want to set it at 135, which is at the middle ground, or you might find it's more important to get the greatest degree of accuracy at 200. So you would select the point at which you fine-tune. Now, we did have feedback from photographers that that's not actually ideal when you're zooming, because it means that you might have that accuracy at one point, but it's not going to be retained throughout the entire zoom range. So on the D6, we've improved that so you can actually apply two different variants for the fine tune now. So you could, again, using the example of the 70 to 200, you could apply one level of fine tune at 70 and another at 200, and that will automatically be recognized as you zoom your lens. So giving you a greater kind of focus accuracy throughout the range, basically.
That's excellent. There is one point to mention, which I actually asked Rishi a while back, was that it does have to be at the extremes of the zoom lens. You can't sort of fine tune for the middle of the focal range. If it's 70 to 200, for example, it has to be one at 70, one at 200, as opposed to a value that's somewhere in the middle. So just because I'm sure that someone will ask, it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, thanks for clarifying that. Absolutely right. So yes, going on about some other new features of the D6. Firstly, speed. I mean, this camera is designed where you want the ultimate in terms of getting your images really quickly. A lot of these cameras already, as I said, being used by top news photographers in the country, where not only sort of capturing the action, but getting the images to your chosen picture desk or your newspaper and so on is absolutely paramount. But the D6 goes a step better than the D5 when it comes to speed. First of all, we put in 14 frames a second, so it really does pack a punch in terms of getting that a lot of frames out there. Again, wildlife, you want to capture a bird's wings in a certain position, or sports, you want to capture that exact decisive moment. But we've also put in some other continuous shooting options as well. So we put in a quiet continuous, which will shoot up to 5 frames a second, much quieter. But you've also got a completely silent shooting option as well. So you can shoot up to 10.5 frames a second in completely silent mode. So talking about, comparison with the mirrorless cameras, because a lot of photographers now are getting used to the fact that you can shoot silently if you've got a mirrorless camera, or you can do that with the D6 as well. And whether you're shooting RAW or JPEG, you can retain the full resolution, which I didn't mention actually, resolution 20.8 million pixel.
Yes.
And you can retain that and shoot at 10.5 frames per second.
Okay,
we've also...
Sorry,
yeah.
I was just going to ask about...
No, sorry, Karen.
So for example, with the D5, you could shoot it up to 14 frames per second, but only in mirror up mode, is that right?
Absolutely spot on.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I didn't actually clarify that. That's a good point, Becky. So basically, with the D5, you could shoot 12 frames a second with full autofocus and full auto exposure. You could shoot at 14 frames a second. However, there was no AF or AE, and you would have complete mirror blackout, which means that you wouldn't be able to see your subject.
Right.
But we've improved the mirror and mirror and shutter design of the D6. Hopefully you can see on the screen here a sort of a diagram of actually the camera shutter. So now you can shoot at 14 frames a second with much less mirror blackout time. Now we've improved the mirror and shutter return action. It's much more dampened, so it's softer, but it's also much quicker. And I mean, I can't show you, but you'd have to take my word for it. But actually looking through the viewfinder of the D6, even if you're shooting at 14 frames a second, you get a very, very minimal blackout. So it really does help you to continue, concentrating on framing your subject and making sure you've got your composition whilst the camera's still focusing and so on. Excellent. And it really makes a big difference over the D5. It's a big improvement.
I think what we'll do is once we've had a look at the slides, we'll switch back to your camera view and you can kind of give us as good as we possibly can, a little outside the box tour of what the D6 looks like. And I have a few questions being pinged to my phone, so we can also do a Q&A afterwards. Anyway, as you were.
Brilliant. How many screens is that you're looking at right now?
At the moment,
your phone as well.
4 on the go.
Yeah,
goodness.
Yeah. And no, good. So the 10.5 frames a second in full 20.8 million pixel resolution, as we said, when you want to be completely silent. But another thing about that is it actually reduces shutter wear. Another time when you might want to use completely silent photography is when you're shooting time lapse as well. So let's say you're shooting a time lapse over a day. You might be taking tens of thousands of images. Now, those of you that have already got the Z6 or Z7 will know about the advantages of not using a mechanical shutter, but also D850 as well. You can put it into silent mode whereby the mechanical shutter isn't used, and you're actually doing no actuations whatsoever. So you could take hundreds of thousands of images, if you like, for a time lapse over a period of days, weeks, whatever you want, and it's not wearing the shutter one bit. So the D5 also carries through that improvement in technology. Now, as I said before, we haven't had any Premier League football, so I've got the next best thing, which is my 4-year-old daughter here. And this is in the garden for 60 frames per second at a 2 million pixel resolution. So a lot of photographers that are using cameras like D4, D5, D6 will be news and sports photographers who want their images to arrive on the picture desk within seconds of them being taken. Because these days, not only is the quality of your picture, important, but for news and sports, it's about how quickly you can get it to your chosen destination. So, in conjunction with the WT6, you can get your images to anywhere in the world. So the camera uses wireless technology. It will be sending them in the background to either to your phone or to a Wi-Fi device with a dongle on a network, and they can be being sent within milliseconds of you taking them to absolutely anywhere in the world. Now, for photographers that have been using the D5, the wireless technology is actually quicker in the D6, and also for photographers that are using a wired LAN, which is an Ethernet cable, because in many sports venues, for instance, all the photographers will have an Ethernet port, and what they'll be doing is the camera will be connected via Ethernet or LAN cable, and they'll be sending their images straight away to their picture desk. And with the D6, it's actually 15% quicker than it was in the D5. And actually, Nikon are the market leaders in this technology. We provide the most stable, the fastest wireless technology out of any brand out there.
Interesting. Now, I have a question. I'm just going to switch back to my view very quickly. On the wireless capability, because a lot of people have started using SnapBridge with some success, and is the D6 also compatible with SnapBridge?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I'll let me jump forward. Now you can still see my screen rather than me, right?
Yes, pretty much.
So actually, I was going to say it's a good question. SnapBridge is becoming increasingly popular amongst photographers as a way of quickly downloading your images onto your phone or to your smart device. Maybe it's for social media, for Instagram, or you just want to really quickly email a picture to someone. And SnapBridge, the latest version of SnapBridge is really good. It's really stable. It's quick and easy to use, and you can configure it in a number of ways. So you can have it so it's permanently connected to your camera via Bluetooth Low Energy. So you can either select the images from your camera roll off your phone, or you can have every single image you take being sent to your phone in the background, or you can use your camera to send pictures to your phone. So there's a number of ways that you can do that. And the D6 has got the SnapBridge technology. So it's got built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. The SnapBridge uses a combination of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. It uses Bluetooth Low Energy, as I said, to keep permanently paired. So once it's paired, it's actually paired for life until you remove the connection in the menu. But also the D6 has got built-in Wi-Fi as well. Mm-hmm. So as well as the wireless dongle we talked about, the WT6, you can actually send images directly to your home network, whether it's to a PC or to a Mac, through your network or just through your computer's direct Wi-Fi. So really hugely significant improvement for a lot of photographers. Let's say you're a portrait photographer, for instance, working in the studio. This means that you can have all your images being sent to your computer straight away without the need for you to take your card out, without the need for you to connect your camera up via a cable. Yes. So that your clients can see the images straight away. And it's really quick and easy to pair it with your computer using Nikon's free wireless transmitter utility app. Right, it will take you about 30 seconds.
If that. Someone did ask me a few weeks back because I discovered this feature with the Z6 that I didn't know existed.
Oh, right. Yes.
And someone said, "Oh, you're doing a screen share. What's that app with the arrow in it?" And I said, "Oh, that's the wireless transmitter utility. I think that's what it's called." Which works with the Z6, Z7, and now D6. I don't know if there are any other cameras that it works with.
Z6, Z7, D6 for the moment. Yeah.
Okay. So potentially more going forward. But certainly if you're...
I would assume so. Yeah.
Because if you're not let's say a working sports photographer and you're not going to be sending your pictures to a press room, but you're perhaps a wildlife photographer or a very keen sports photographer that doesn't necessarily provide for the press, it's still nice to be able to transfer your pictures wirelessly without the addition of the WT7. Are we on? Is it WT7 this one?
WT6 on this one. WT7 will work with the Zs and the D850.
Yeah, it always confuses me, the sequence. Yeah.
I know, absolutely, me too.
So that's just to stress for anyone who's watching who maybe thinks they need that. If you are doing serious work and you need those super fast transfer speeds, then by all means, the WT6 is the way to go. If it's for more personal use, or you're quite happy at the end of the day just to connect so the camera and your computer, as long as they're on the same Wi-Fi network, will essentially transfer images without any problems. So that's a very handy additional little feature. And it also has, for the first time in a long time, has GPS, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and that is exactly where I was going with the next slide. So that was perfect timing there, Becky. So, so yeah, hopefully you can see the slide now. So no, perfect, spot on. So yes, for the first time now, the D6 first DSLR with built-in GPS, hugely significant for a lot of photographers for a number of reasons. I think if you're going on holiday with your camera, you're going on an expedition, on a safari or something like that, you want to be able to pinpoint exactly where in the world you were when you took those images to show people, on Google Earth or something like that, Google Maps. Then traditionally with the previous generation Pro DSLRs, you'd use the GP1, but now with the D6, it's built in. So that means it provides all of the longitude, latitude, and altitude information to every image that you take. It coordinates via satellite. So you can do precisely that, geotag your images. But another advantage of doing that is it also syncs with the universal time clock. Now, what that means is that your camera will always be exactly accurate in terms of the time, including daylight savings and things like that. And where that that's useful for any photographer, but where it really is important is for news agencies, picture agencies, newspapers, and things like that. They might often have a number of photographers working at a specific event, or a number of contributing photographers sending images to them with the WT6 that we were talking about. And if they're being kind of ordered in chronological order according to the time on the camera, if the photographer's camera's times weren't synced accurately, then they'd be all over the place. But now, if all the photographers are using D6s, they've all got the built-in GPS and they've all coordinated via the UTC, Universal Time Clock, all of those images coming through are going to be ordered in the exact chronological order, which makes the picture editor's life a lot easier. Also for you when you come home as well, you've got cards on different, using different cameras at once and so on, you can coordinate them exactly. Yeah. So a big upgrade there as well. Yeah. So yes, so moving on, something I mentioned at the beginning, I think we all know how rugged and how weather resistant our cameras are. Looking at this slide here, you can see the yellow bits on the camera icons there representing where all of the rubber weather sealing is on the camera. So I think, there is no brand that thinks about weather sealing of cameras quite like Nikon does. Again, we've carried that heritage that's come through from cameras like the D4, D5, sorry, it's F4, F5. Right through to the D6, and it is the ultimate in terms of weather sealing. To tell you a story about the weather sealing, I don't know. Are you much of a football fan, Becky?
A little bit, yeah. When I'm forced into it.
By default. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge football fan myself, but I do remember watching the World Cup final in 2018. And I remember it was largely a dry day, but at the trophy presentation, when France went out on the pitch at the end with the trophy, the heavens opened. It was torrential rain.
It was awful.
Yeah, in Moscow, it was horrendous. Now I could see a lot of photographers I knew. I could see them. I was watching it live on TV, and none of them had rain covers because they weren't prepared for the weather. So yeah, the World Cup final, I talked to a photographer who was working there, a lovely chap called Facundo, who works for EPA, European Press Agency, and he was there shooting on the day. And he said the rain was so heavy that he couldn't actually see through the viewfinder. But he was using a D5 at the time. Of course, this was before the D6 came out. And his camera just kept on shooting flawlessly. I asked him for a sample image. So there you go, just to show you as an example of how good the weather sealing is. And actually, I have to say, I'm not on here to rubbish our competitors, but some of the photographers that were using other brands, their cameras didn't fare quite as well as those using Nikon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So there you go. Moving on, ergonomics, as I said at the beginning, I mean, the ergonomics of the D6 are what you would expect of a Nikon flagship camera. Nikon really do think about the layout of the camera, where the buttons are, the grip and so on, how kind of tactile it feels in your hands and so on. As you said, Becky, I think what we'll do, if it's all right, is once I've gone through the slides, we'll do a little virtual tour of the camera.
And I'll ask you some of
what I'm talking.
some of the harder questions
Yeah.
that are coming through on my phone now.
Okay. I look
Hopefully
forward to
won't put you on the spot too much, but yeah, exactly.
I'll answer anything I can.
Okay.
So yes, the battery life,
Mhm.
what you'd expect from a Nikon, actually 25% more battery life than any of our competition, which is great. And approximately 8 times longer battery life than you'd get from a mirrorless competitor. So, I mean, 8 times longer, it just keeps going and going.
Exactly.
8,760 shots in continuous
Amazing.
release, which is more than any photographer would ever need. And customization as well. I won't dwell on this too much, but just to say that we've really put a lot of customizable options into the D6, more than any of our previous cameras for what you want to do. Just to show you one example of that, if we go into the custom setting menu, which is the pencil tab, we go down to controls and we go into F3, which is the camera's customized controls option. You can, for instance, customize all of these buttons. So you see them highlighting up in yellow. These are the buttons that you can control. Right down to if you've got a lens with a lens with it's got its own custom function button, which I'll show you. You can do different things. Now here we're recording shooting functions, which means at the touch of a button on your lens, you can change it from, say, shooting at a 400th of a second to shooting at a 30th of a second, just with the touch of a button. You don't have to go into any menus. You just press that button once, and whilst your finger's on the button. So if you want to go from capturing the action, freezing the action at a high shutter speed, to doing a pan blur, for instance, just one touch of a button and you can do that. But there's a whole host of different things that you can do with the custom function button.
Yeah,
like I said, I won't dwell on it.
No, I was going to say, I think that when Neil and Richie did the Nikon owner evening, there was probably about half an hour of that dedicated to customization. There's so much that you can do with this camera.
Absolutely, yeah. You can really tailor the camera for your needs, and yeah. Okay. In terms of the memory, just like the D4 and the D5 before it, the D6 continues to take the XQD format, which is very reliable, very stable, very quick. But also the good news is the latest format of memory card, which is the CF Express Type B, is the same form factor, and the camera will take that as well. So in terms of speed, if you want the ultimate in downloading your images, CF Express Type B cards will actually read and write at up to 1700 megabits per second, which is really more than you'll ever need.
Yeah.
So downloading your images is a lightning fast, really lightning fast. We used to say to photographers, go and have a cup of tea while your images are downloading.
Yes, I
you
used
can't
to
do
say
that.
that
Well,
too.
unfortunately,
No, it's done. You can't even nip out the room for a moment because it's all done. But
No.
You've gone off your chair. It's very
Exactly.
impressive.
Exactly. So not only are the CF Express and the XQD cards very quick, but they're also very reliable as well. The older technology like CF and SD, for instance. CF is 25-year-old technology.
Gosh.
So if there are any photographers out there using cameras with a CF card, time to upgrade. Come on, we've got new formats now. We've got XQD now and CF Express Type 2, which will just give you so many more advantages in terms of speed and reliability.
Yeah, fantastic.
New X-Speed image processor as well. Now, the image processor is very important because that's kind of like the brain of the camera, if you like.
Yes.
And the D6 has the X-Speed 6, which we first saw launch with the Z6 and Z7, which is Nikon's latest generation of processing engine. And it actually gives you a lot of improvements in terms of speed, but also ISO, which is something that presumably a lot of photographers are going to be concerned about. Now, traditionally, you wouldn't really want to go above 6400 ISO. This shot was taken by sports photographer Clive Mason, who I mentioned before, from Getty Images. This was the flower moon we had a few weeks ago, the last supermoon of 2020. And he took this on a 600mm f4 lens, but he told me he forgot to take his tripod with him.
Oh, wow.
Now, but it goes to show that he's a very good photographer at whatever he puts his hand to. So I'm sure with a 600mm lens, framing that up was no easy task. But this was taken at 6400 ISO. Now, had he had his tripod with him, he could have dropped the ISO and used a slightly longer shutter speed. But actually, the fact that he wasn't able to do that, he had to push up the ISO, enabling him to use a shutter speed that he could use without tripod. But the D6 goes way above that. So going back to, I'm going the wrong way, going to Tony O'Brien, who I mentioned before. Yeah. He took this picture the other day, of a frog. He told me this was it was really, really dark conditions.
Oh, wow.
This was taken with 102,400 ISO on the D6. Yeah. So it just goes to show, yes, there's a little bit of noise in the background, but it's very minimal.
I mean, 102,000 ISO, that's pretty impressive. Because you would think
it's not bad at all, is it?
No, you're thinking sort of if you look at the D850, even the noise coming out of the D850 is quite a pleasant noise anyway, but it starts to get quite heavy around the sort of 6,400, 8,000 mark. But that at 102,000 is incredibly impressive.
Absolutely. And what we don't officially release figures for how much, people say how many stops better is the D6 than the D5. Nikon don't say, but we kind of rely on feedback from photographers, and the feedback I've had so far has been that it's probably at least one and a half, maybe even 2 stops better than the D5. So where you want a camera that really can see in the dark, the D6 absolutely does that.
Yeah.
Other improvements, again, due to the XP6 processing, white balance. White balance, honestly, I took the camera out for the first time the other day, just to quantify. I was socially distancing, but first time I took some pictures of my kids. And the one thing that blew me away was how accurate the white balance was. I was taking pictures of my kids in backlit situations, some with sunlight, some with backlit, and some in under trees where they're kind of in shade. And every single situation, the auto white balance copes so well. And again, it's something that we're hearing from photographers that are using the D6 already, just how good it copes with skin tones. Now, yeah, I'll crack on, but just these are some images taken by another really talented photographer that's been using D6 recently, a sports photographer called Andy Hooper, who's the chief sports photographer for the Daily Mail. He's won numerous awards in his career. And he's been taking a series of images documenting athletes having to train in their home environments because of the coronavirus situation. They haven't had access to the usual training facilities. I just thought it was just a nice set of images that he took, all on D6, showing you the accuracy. And he told me that he wouldn't have been able to get this shot without the 14 frames a second. And again, you can see just how well the camera copes with skin tones. Again, this Taekwondo chap, again, 14 frames a second, doing that high kick down the street. The D6 has really come into its own here, not only in terms of speed, but colour and white balance and accuracy and everything really. So yeah, I mean, kind of. So really kind of summarising about the D6, it really is the ultimate camera for pro photographers.
Amazing.
Anyone who just wants the best. Sorry.
Exactly. No, I was going to say. So I'm going to switch over. You can switch over to your view if you like, so that we can see your face. So
you can try to see the camera. Sure.
We can see the camera. Exactly. So it's an interesting thing. A lot of people ask me, why the D6 has got the same resolution as the D5. But from everything that you've been saying, the key things to kind of take home are the autofocus system is like nothing else. I mean, it's dramatically different. The low light performance is something that I always look at when I'm looking at a new camera. I'm always like, how much more can I push it? So low light performance, and what else would you say is maybe a key improvement apart from those two factors?
Well, I think a lot of things. I mean, as you quite rightly say, resolution is the same as D5. I'll just quickly quantify that, and that is that this camera is aimed at any photographer that just wants the best. But we feel that the 20.8 million pixels is the ultimate imbalance between quality and speed and size and so on. So you might want to get a lot of images on your card. For sports photographers, news photographers, they want their images to transmit quickly. If you want the ultimate in resolution, we've got the Z7 or the D850, but this isn't necessarily aimed at that market. I mean, a 20.8 million pixel image still is just unbelievable detail.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the quality from that is largely going to be down to the size of the output anyway. Yeah. So, it's going to be down to the printer you're using or the screen that you're looking at it on. Yes, where you want the ability to crop to a ridiculous degree, Z7, D850, they're going to be better in that respect. But the resolution on this, we believe, is the ideal for the kind of market that this is aimed at. So to answer your other questions, Becky, I mean, the things that have been improved, undoubtedly speed, undoubtedly the autofocus accuracy, tracking, white balance, but also the customization, usability of the camera. There are so many things I haven't even talked about. So touchscreen, for instance.
Yeah.
Can I do that now?
Yeah, go
Would
for
this be
it.
a good opportunity to talk about that?
Yeah,
So those of you that are using now,
you can
what I
just
have to
about
do
see
is
it.
hide
No.
my eyes because so I have to hide my eyes because I'm using a Nikon Z to record the webcam as I think you are,
Yeah.
and if it sees my eyes, it will pick up. Eye detection will pick up on my eyes. So hide my eyes, and then you can see the camera. So using the touch screen here is really pleasurable. Those of you that are using any of the sort of the latest generation Nikon DSLRs or Z cameras will be used to the touch screen now. And if you haven't got a camera with touch screen, you'll be absolutely blown away with that as an upgrade
You'll
in
probably
terms of what you
convert
can do.
pretty quickly, actually. I find that now I'm
Yeah,
so used to using a D850 and a Z6 that when a camera doesn't have a touch screen, I'm doing
that's
this.
it. Absolutely. So what you can do is you can. Oh, sorry,
No,
Becky.
go for it.
You can use the touch screen to review your images. Double tap if you wanted to select an image, and double tap again on any part of the image to check focus. Things like that. Flick through your images really quickly. I don't know if you can see that. If it's
Just
out of
about.
focus, I can't
Yeah.
tell. But anything that you want to do on the camera via the menu, you can do with touch screen. So that's a really nice upgrade.
That is
And it's a whole new OLED screen on the back of the camera as well. So really rich blacks, really good contrast, really good color. So you can really accurately see, check your images before doing anything with them on the back of the screen. So again, I'd say that's a really good feature that's been upgraded from the D5.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm having a look here. So a few questions like, okay, so it's only 4K, and it doesn't have a stabilized image sensor, so no IBIS. What are those things? But I can also kind of, having heard both your slideshow and your briefing, and also having heard one the other day, I can kind of see the logic behind it. It is geared for a very specific kind of photographer. And I suppose if people really do want IBIS and they do want higher resolution than 4K 30p, we say go for a Z camera. Is that right?
I've spoken to a number of pro photographers that have been using D5s or maybe D850s, but also have a Z camera in their bag as well because it's relatively small and light. You're right. I mean, it's got fantastic video capabilities. It will shoot at 4K. Ultimately, these days you probably don't have need to output anything larger than 4K. But exactly right. I mean, if you want, a really, really good video camera, I would say the Z6 would be the one to go for, or even considering the Z50 if you weren't in the market for something like the Z6. But this is primarily aimed at photographers that want the best in terms of their imaging. But it's a good video camera as well. 4K is fantastic resolution.
Yeah.
So for most people, this will do exactly what you want for everything. But where you want it to be primarily a video camera rather than the stills, it may be worth considering the Z6 for that purpose.
Good. All right. Well, we can put them to bed. Matt Gilney wanted to say hello. I don't know what his question was, but he did say hello.
Hi, Matt.
And I had a couple of questions we've kind of discussed a lot of these, but I suppose I can kind of summarize it. So I had someone saying, so the video is on par, you say, with the D850 and the D5? Is that kind of what we're saying?
I would say that's a fair assumption, fair comment. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then in terms of low light performance, we're looking at a step up from the D5, which is already the best out there for low light.
Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. As I said, arguably one to two stops. Let you be the judge of exactly how much better it is because it's not a figure that Nikon, announced. But from my experience with the camera and feedback I've got, I would say probably closer to 2 stops better.
Okay, that's very impressive. And then in terms of the GPS, does that impact the battery life quite heavily? Do you know?
Good question. I've not seen a figure on that. I mean, ultimately, yes, it's going to use more battery, but as we said, the D6 incorporates the XB6 processing engine, which is a lot more efficient. And our figures would kind of indicate that the battery life out of this is equal or better than that of the D5. So I don't think it's anything to worry about. You're not going to worry about the battery performance of a D6 at any point. Okay. It's not going to be an issue. It's just not going to be an issue.
Brilliant. Yeah. All right, lovely. I think those are the main questions. I'm going to just double check because I got sent a big list and some of them were repeated. There was one person who just asked, in terms of, you've actually shown some examples from them, but in terms of photographers who have had these in their hands, who are reviewing them right now and can kind of give people out there a real life review, if you like, who would be, let's say, your top, who would you point them towards in terms of people that have been using the cameras in anger?
Well, I think I've mentioned the sort of the key photographers throughout the talk, but some of the best sports photographers in the world have been using them. I mean, Clive Mason,
Yeah.
who is one of the chief sports photographers for Getty Images.
Yeah.
I mean, they are the ultimate in terms of when you need a good image. That's who you go to, and he is a fantastic sports photographer. He was one of the first to get his hands on the camera because he was taking brochure shots. Some of the samples I showed you earlier on in the talk, but also really technical people like Tony O'Brien. I thought Tony would be critical, discerning, but critical if there were faults.
Yeah.
So I was waiting for him to, I wasn't waiting for him to give me negative feedback. I knew it wasn't going to be negative, but I was seeing if he was going to say, oh, well, this isn't so good. He's blown away by it, absolutely blown away by it. And he is the most technical of all the photographers out there. And he's not only a great sport photographer, but an awesome wildlife photographer as well. And just been, I mean, obviously, sadly, we've been very limited over the past few months in terms of what we can photograph, but he's been out photographing just as he saw like frogs or some really great pictures of dragonflies, unbelievable. And he couldn't believe how accurate the focusing was on dragonflies. He said he didn't think that a camera could actually focus on the dragonfly so accurately. And I haven't, the presentation's haven't got enough time to show you all the images he sent me, but some stunning images. So a lot of really good photographers, like I said, Andy Hooper, chief photographer for the Daily Mail as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of great photographers have been using this camera and really, really like it. Really like the improvements over this bike.
So we'll tell them, look at Clive Mason, look at Tony, look at Andy Hooper. Those probably they will have posted something, I'd imagine, by now that the cameras are starting to finally arrive in people's hands. Slowly but surely.
Yeah.
A little note
absolutely.
from my general manager hat. If you have ordered a D6 or you are on the waiting list, don't worry, you're not forgotten about. They are being handed out in a specific sequence, and MPS numbers are very helpful. So if you have one and you place an order, let us know your MPS number so we can make sure we get you a D6. Simple as that. There was one, oh yes, and the shutter life. Do you know what the shutter life is, or the top shutter count?
I'll be honest in that I haven't seen it written down. Now, it probably is, the figure is somewhere, but I would assume it was 400,000 actuations.
Okay.
It will be either 350,000 or 400,000. So for most people, that's a good amount of time. And that is not to say that the shutter will pack up at that time. It could keep on going. I've seen a D5 that did 1.2 million actuations on one shutter.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen D3s that have been up in the 700,000 and 800,000 mark as well. So, they do. If you look after your cameras reasonably well, they do just keep going and going. So, but that's very helpful. I think that's all the questions that I got immediately. What I will do is, so anyone who has more specific or technical questions, please feel free to pop them in the comments below. When we upload this video, you will have space to comment, and then between myself and any questions I can't answer, I will field to Rob. And we will get them answered for you. Apologies once again for not being able to do it live. It just seemed like technology was not cooperating with us today. But we did want to get this to you in as complete a form as possible. So thank you for watching. Thank you to Rob for joining us today, and thank you for that brilliant presentation. I feel like I know a lot more about the camera as well. As you said, there's so much more to kind of say, and you've just almost scratched the surface on some of the things that it can do. But I think that gives people a much better idea, so thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for having me, Becky.
No problem at all. All right. Just as a final note on the video, if you're not subscribed, please do subscribe. Hit the bell icon. We will be streaming once a week now that the shops are starting to reopen. And as I say, any comments on the D6 or anything else, just drop them below. Thank you very much for watching.